Hey, folks. It's Panthers beat reporter Mike Kaye here with fellow Panthers beat reporter Alex Zietlow.
What's up?
And this is the latest edition of the Processing Blue podcast. And we have a lot to unpack after the Panthers' first win of the season, and really first win in forever, it feels like. But, Alex, first we have to talk about something very serious.
I would adore you to talk about something serious right now.
Okay, well, your laughing does not help with the moment and the sincerity of which I am trying to portray here.
Sorry, I'm somber now.
At the Processing Blue podcast, unlike maybe some other podcasts, we believe in accountability and accuracy. And that is why Mike Kaye is going to eat some crow right
Let's
now.
go.
Last week, I said that the season was not salvageable, and you literally laid out why there could be positives to this season. And while we both agreed that Dave Cannell is showing that he can be a premium play caller in the league, or at least show some style of growth on offense, would be a way of somewhat salvaging the season, I was very pessimistic. And I will tell you, no one could have possibly seen this demolishing in the desert happening. But the fact that we just watched the Panthers put up 36 points on the Raiders, basically shut down their weapons, the Raiders' weapons on defense, and have an all-around complete game, I do think there's a sense of, wow, this is not that bad from the Panthers fan base. And so I think you nailed it from the standpoint of the fan base's temperament, but you also are 3-0 in our beat writer pick'em.
That's right.
And so you constantly give me my flowers. Today, sir, this is your bouquet of verbal affirmation. I think that you nailed it.
Well, I'll graciously accept it. To be clear, I didn't predict a 2-point victory. I didn't predict a 7-point victory for the Panthers. I predicted a 10-point victory, 27-17.
So you were wrong technically,
I
but
was
we're giving you
wrong. Hey, but like a double-digit win after how poor the Panthers had looked the first 2 weeks, after a tumultuous week of, oh my gosh, we're benching the number 1 overall pick in 2023, when the national media was coming at the Panthers, was coming at the organization, when this own podcast was questioning how the organization had guided Bryce Young into this league. But
oh no, that was correct. The way that
okay,
was
yes,
questioned.
but I'm just saying, considering the entire cacophony of last
Oh,
week,
my own word.
and Alex still stuck to his guns and knew that Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, as some say, was going to come up big. I will graciously accept the flowers, but also I know I'm deserving of them too.
Whoa, did we switch sides? Zach here, rubbing the hair on his chinny chin chin.
Also, Jadeveon Clowney, got a sack. Come
Yeah,
on
I
now.
mean,
Come
they're
on
playing
now.
prevent. What? Anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves. So, look, I think in a nutshell, Andy Dalton proved that sometimes the Panthers can be correct. We heard the national conversation of everybody just like throwing barbs at Tepper and all that other stuff. And I think something I brought up on the podcast last week really needs to be taken into consideration. Two things can be true, right?
Yes.
The evidence of absence, or the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. And I think, listen, the Panthers have been a terrible football product for the last 5 years or so under Tepper's ownership, as I knock a TV. But they also can make the correct move every now and then. It doesn't mean that they're always going to be wrong, as much as that kind of seems that way on the surface. With that said, showing that Andy Dalton was, in my opinion, an enhancement over a detriment, the natural next question is Bryce Young expendable? Now, I think in order to get into that conversation, we have to acknowledge what was given up for him, right? It was a treasure trove of draft picks, including this year's first overall pick, based on the results of last year. and DJ Moore, who now has signed an extension with the Bears, right? That's a lot. That's not just like immediate assets. It's also cap control sanctity as well. Like with those picks, they could have drafted a tight end. They could have drafted a guard that they didn't have to pay $100 million to. Stuff like that. It's a lot of an investment. And I think now the natural progression is like, hey, should they trade him? Well, when Kenny Pickett and Justin Fields and all these other guys are going for day 3 picks, it's worth having a discussion of whether or not they should even entertain conversations.
Yeah, well, I will say I think it's interesting that a lot of people are saying the Panthers were acting rash and with haste when they're deciding to bench Bryce Young. And then those same characters are saying, hey, why don't y'all go and explore trades with them? Don't you think, isn't there something hypocritical about that a little bit, considering...
Yes, it's national talking heads.
But I find that fascinating. When has Dave Canales said that he is moving on from Bryce Young? Literally, we asked him in that Monday press conference, so is Andy Dalton going to be the starter moving forward? He said, Andy's going to be the starter this week. Andy's our quarterback this week. He gives us the best chance to beat the Raiders. When asked specifically, hey, does Bryce Young have a chance, or do you still think Bryce has the future being an NFL franchise quarterback? He said, absolutely, we're a developmental program. When asked specifically about trading talk, this is a direct quote from his press conference, that's not something we're really considering. We have a great situation with our quarterbacks right now with guys that have experience. We love where we're at, and it's all hands on deck. A lot of people might consider that coach speak or whatever, but at every turn, there has been no discussion of, hey, the Panthers want a trade. The one thing I will say, there has been reporting that teams have inquired about him.
And I can tell you, to my knowledge, there has been some general interest. But beyond
what does interest mean though?
Right, exactly. Look, every team in the league that's smart checks in on, when Scott Fitter used to say he was in on every trade, it just means you're examining it. Does the conversation extend beyond is he available and for what? We don't know, right? Yeah. But to your point, something that I found really laughable is people criticize this team for giving up on Baker Mayfield, giving up on Sam Darnold, not giving guys legitimate chances. And then suddenly they expect them to trade Bryce Young or think it's advantageous to Bryce Young that he gets traded. This is a family show, but BS. Zach, I'm trying to keep the FCC, in check.
Yeah, Zach got nervous when you said this is a family show.
But, to me, I think this is the way to play it because you have a trade deadline, you have the off season. His value is at an all-time low. I made the comparison. He played like Luke Falk, who was a 6th-round pick out of Washington State, who could barely complete a pass once he got to the NFL. And the only reason why you would trade that is you would say, yeah, I want to get one over on the Panthers, a first-year GM. A first year, essentially an assistant GM in Brant Tillis, who's the EVP of football operations, try to get one over on him, one of your favorite films, Draft Day, with the fictional Jaguars GM. Yep. To me, the market dictates that you would reach out and say, hey, maybe we can take advantage of this. But also logic dictates that you would be prudent and say, hey, let's see how this plays out. There were reports that the dynamic with Bryce and the organization's changed. Yeah, no kidding. Obviously. Yeah, cool. He was frustrated. Yeah, sure. If you got demoted, you'd be frustrated too. He was surprised by his benching. Well, evidently he didn't watch film as much as he thought he could. Here's the thing that I find funny, right? The reports are coming out nationally, and it's placed as those close to him were surprised. How does that help him? How does that make him look good? But you know what does help him is throughout the week, we heard from multiple people in the organization that he was handling it very well. He ran the scout team well. We saw him on the sideline. He looked like he was locked in. Austin Corbett said he was locked in. Tommy Tremble said he was locked in. Those two guys are very honest dudes. Dave Canales liked the way his leadership was. That is a good sign.
He was a captain. He walked out into the middle of the field and said, yo, I'm going to choose heads or tails. how is that?
That's something that we only reserve for my oldest son in the house. So that's like a big deal.
Okay, but the point still stands. He was locked in on the sideline and he was engaged, and him and Andy were talking every time that we had a chance to see it. It seemed like even though Andy was playing, Andy was teaching something to Bryce, yes, but also learning stuff from Bryce too.
And look, I think we've talked about his confidence. When you see that the offense can function and the defense can function when the quarterback is not putting the ball in harm's way and putting the other unit in a bind, that inspires your confidence in the weapons around you. Yeah, you can say, oh, wow, they performed to their zenith with another guy. I should mope about this because I'm not as good. Or you can say to yourself, look at how he trusts Adam Thielen. Look at how he trusts Jonathan Mingo. Look at how he trusts Xavier Legette. Look how he trusts his blocking. Look at how the defense reacts when they're not down by 14 points right out the gate.
Look at the chances he's taken. Look at that throw that we have seen Bryce make in Alabama. There are two that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. The one on the first drive where Tommy Tremble just kind of does this little seam route up the middle, and Andy throws a gorgeous pass with the right amount of pace at the right time that gets right over the backers, but also sneaks in right before the safeties, which are lurking right behind Tommy. And Tommy makes a beautiful catch, but also doesn't get lit up. I mean, those are passes that we saw Bryce make in training camp. And Andy made that one, and it's a very low probability catch, but it was amazing. But it's also something that Bryce can do. The other thing, Xavier Legette is one catch on the day. He's trying to find a zone in the middle of the field. They're playing zone coverage. Two linebackers are basically on the hash marks. And Andy Dalton takes a crazy risk and just chucks it, it just zooms it in there right in between those two guys. Xavier catches the ball and runs for 30 yards. These aren't like plays that require a Cam Newton style arm or some Peyton Manning type maneuvering at the line of scrimmage. I think to your point, watching Andy Dalton do these things could inspire Bryce's confidence.
And look, to your point, Dave Canales, when he says that they're a developmental-minded staff, he is one of the few guys who has worked with guys who have been able to take that step back and then come forward. Look at Baker Mayfield. Look at Geno Smith. Whatever credit you want to give to him in those regards, I mean, he understands what it takes to help a guy nurture his confidence. And I think, look, will Bryce Young be here next year? Who knows? But the way he responds to this benching will say a lot about his career moving forward. If he's got grit and gumption, he could force his way back. Look, Andy Dalton's been a 5-year journeyman backup for a reason, right? There is going to be some regression because that performance, there wasn't a ton of tape on him in this offense. There wasn't a lot to expect. He was kind of playing with house money in Vegas. You know what I mean? Like there's... Oh man, the puns this week have just been very fun.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But speaking of that, so you and I are both on the same page that waiting it out a little bit is the right call, correct?
Yep.
So with that said, let's get into Vegas and what went right, because I think we've touched on it a little bit, but what the Panthers hope is that what happened in Vegas won't stay in Vegas, right? Like this was about as competent as this team has looked since Steve Wilkes was running the show, and that was a very basic run-heavy offense. This was like lighting up the sky. Andy Dalton made like 4 throws that you're he looked like vintage, like TCU, early Bengals, gunslinger, red rifle. And I have to add this anecdote on I think it was Thursday, he's walking to practice and some fan excitedly goes, "Yeah, let's go, Red Rocket." And I was like, oh boy. And he didn't even like kind of blink. He just kind of moved forward. He didn't even acknowledge it because it's the Red Rifle, guys. That man uses pomade from the gods.
Come on now.
I wish I had a coif like that. You know what I mean?
Also, it's kind of funny. I don't know if you noticed on the CBS broadcast, they kept panning to his family.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the red hair come from? They're all like, I guess his mom is strawberry blonde, but the rest are blonde.
Oh, I have friends who have redheaded kids that it's. I don't know if it skips a generation, but my son, you see me, like I've got brown hair and brown eyes. My son looks exactly like me, but with blue eyes and like lighter hair. Like you've seen him.
Maybe we should bring a geneticist on. A genetics expert.
We whatever. Anyway, I make enough jokes about that.
No,
but Zach is down to do it. Ratings.
Okay, but to your point about what went right in Las Vegas.
Basically everything, right?
Basically everything. The thing that I think kind of got overshadowed, and rightly so, with Andy Dalton's remarkable performance. Only quarterback with 300 passing yards and 3 touchdowns in a single season in the NFL this year, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So that deserved a lot of attention.
In a single game. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. The thing that really stuck out to me, which was the running game finally got to shine. The running game has been good the first 2 weeks, man.
Chuba Hubbard, man, I tried to tell the kids.
I mean, we both tried to tell them. We both said, hey, if there's one guy on this team that deserves your fantasy football attention, now might be 2. Heck, now might be 3 with Deontay Johnson, Chuba, and Andy Dalton. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The guy that we were saying from the start was Chuba Hubbard. Why? Because last year he came on remarkably strong. The offensive line only got upgraded. His running style is really good in the interior.
He does not lose yardage.
Yes.
Does not lose yardage.
And also, on top of that, if you want to add some motivation sort of stuff, he's on a contract year. They're going to wear this dude out.
Yeah, they're going to run him into the ground, and that's smart business, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, sure. And we've touched on this, how NFL general managers love running backs at this time in their career.
Right.
And he's played well through the first 2 games. The reason why the running game didn't get off the ground is because they couldn't convert on 3rd down. And if you can't sustain drives and you're constantly playing from behind, guess what? You're not running the football.
Sure.
Particularly when you're turning the ball over, you're not running the football. So, but the running game got a chance to shine. Chuba Hubbard looked remarkable. He had 21 carries for 114 yards. By the way, 55 receiving yards. The running back who couldn't catch notched the first receiving touchdown of the year.
Massive win for the Jugs machine. Am I right?
And Tommy Tremble was a huge part of that first one.
The Jugs machine going to be an all-pro in Carolina.
Yeah, so that's my thing, is the rushing offense looked great, and of course the rushing offense looked great, which helped the passing offense look good, which inspired the defense some hope, which made special teams kind of poured on. Johnny Hecker had a good day. Eddie Pinheiro was perfect. So all that kind of moved together. That's what I would say went right in Las Vegas. I imagine you're going to talk maybe about Deontay Johnson.
I am. But first I really want to get to the defense because I've been extremely critical of the defense. Okay. One thing that I said going into this game is they have to shut down the tight ends. When I was in Philly, Gardner Minshew was the backup. He had the best game of... He produced the best game of Dallas Goedert's career to that point up until, Dallas Goedert just owned the New Orleans Saints this past week. I thought the defense did a splendid job shutting down Brock Bowers and Mike Mayer. That was really important. They did a really good job, Mike Jackson and J.C. Horn on Devontae Adams. Mm-hmm. There was talk of potentially benching Gardner Minshew after this game, and I think a lot of it was due to Evero's success in shutting down everything. They played a little bit more even fronts than they normally do. They blitzed a lot. Trevin Wallace. See what happens when a beat writer does some internet bullying? I'm just kidding. I don't know if that's directly to that, but I thought...
He did get his defensive debut.
Yeah, he played 11 snaps. I thought he played fine. It was more kind of like a Sam linebacker-esque role. The pass rush was... I really like this Jaden Peavy kid. I didn't pay attention to him a lot early on in training camp, but he looked good in the preseason. They clearly like him. They boosted him from the practice squad. He now leads them with 1.5 sacks through 3 games. He's kind of come out of nowhere. He played 2 career games before he got here. I think he's an interesting guy. We also got to see the run defense kind of stabilize a little bit. Obviously, not being down by several points is a plus there. But yeah, getting to Deontay Johnson, he played like I expected him to.
Really?
Well, no, from camp.
Okay.
He looked like a legitimate number 1 wide receiver. And sometimes it just takes having a guy who just knows where to put the ball on you. I know he was very fond of Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger was huge in his development in Pittsburgh. And when he left, they ran into, a concoction of awfulness at quarterback. Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett. That can be very frustrating if you're a wide receiver, as we saw with Adam Thielen just last week, right? I thought Adam Thielen played really, really well. I think when you have a guy who knows where to put the ball, it's kind of like a pitcher who pitches outside of the zone, can paint. Like the outside, like that's who Andy Dalton is, right? Like sometimes he's gonna give up a home run, or he's gonna, give up a jam shot, blooper, right? Not to get too baseball-y, but like, you know what I mean? Like there's gonna be the occasional bloop, but like Andy Dalton made incredible throws. He protected the ball very well. I think there were like 3 throws that I was like, you know what I mean? And so I think that helps. I think when you can play a complete game like Andy Dalton did, it becomes a complete game for the whole team. As I wrote, what a difference a quarterback makes, right?
Yeah.
And so
I was surprised by his yards after the catch.
Right.
Okay, is that what you're going to get to?
Well, so that's partially knowing where to go, right? There are guys who can throw up the ball and be accurate to a point, but you have to also accurately lead. And I think that's been something. I mean, look, credit to the wide receivers. A lot of that was like them jigsawing through. It
was almost like I was watching a Madden game in real time. They were running like sideline to sideline at times.
And look, the big plays were awesome. I think the most important moment the most important play to me was a play that only picked up like a first down. So it was in the third quarter. You talking about that wheel screen? Yeah.
Okay.
So it was before the Adam Thielen seam 31. I mean, that was phenomenal. So they start the drive at their own 5, and they lose a yard with Miles Sanders. This play is crafted brilliantly. Their backs are against the wall. Dalton's in shotgun. Mingo runs a flat route, and then Dalton and Tremble have a lead combo block in space, and it turns into a wheel route. And Mingo picks up 15 yards. That is a play where everyone has to execute, or you're probably gaining 1 yard, and then you are completely out of phase. It's 2nd and 11, you're at your own 4. Like, to me, that said a lot about Brad Idzik and Dave Canales as play scripters, but it also said a lot about Canales as a play caller. When you have stuff that works in unison, when it's really the scheme, like any wide receiver could have run that flat route and gotten upfield. But when it works that specifically and you pick up 15 yards and that gets you to the 19-yard line, and now you have a host of options in your playbook, right after it, they had 2 straight incompletions, but they were at the 19 and it was 3rd and 10, and they did end up punting. But I thought it said a lot about the way they view the offense and the way they can go outside the norm. Like that's not like an atypical play.
Yeah.
But I thought the way that everything executed was important.
Yeah.
And this was the first time in a game where I felt like they were moving on all cylinders. Like, it was just a really smart play at the time. They knew that he had to kind of be at the line of scrimmage to make the play, and they went with it. And I thought that showed some really smart foresight and really smart rhythm play calling. Is, Canales says that he wants to feel it.
Yeah. He was creative all game, man.
I thought he did they called a really nice game. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good. I mean, they did the Mingo end around thing again, which got some positive yardage. It also got Mingo involved. It got him hit, which got him into the game. I mean, that Adam Thielen touchdown that you described, I can't recall the exact route he took. It might have just been a seam straight to the end zone, but how does he get that open in that situation? Something must have happened. I need to
well, he sacrificed his hamstring to the football gods to do it, but
yeah, but I mean, it was, I don't know, I just came away. It is rare with this team when you see a quarterback drop back to a pass and believe, something good is going to happen the past 2 years. And by the third quarter, I was thinking that. All right, we can move on.
Yeah, let's get into the Bengals, okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
They are 0-3. They are one of 3 0-3 teams entering Week 4. The Panthers are not. So there you go.
How crazy is that?
Right.
How crazy is that?
But blast from the past, Andy Dalton spent his first 9 years in Cincinnati. They're coming to town. He's hosting them. I don't know if he laid out the hors d'oeuvres or whatever, or if he's going to. This game's pivotal for the Panthers because part of the reason why you bench Bryce Young when you do in week 3 is there is a slate of straight, very winnable games before they hit the week 11 bye. I mean, they play Washington, who looks actually relatively good, Cincinnati, Chicago, that's struggling. Oh my gosh! It turns out that DJ Moore playing with a rookie quarterback doesn't solve the entire world's problems. The Giants, they play a lot of these teams, and the only team that really scares you in that stretch is New Orleans because they put a whooping on you. But the Eagles apparently found the blueprint to beat them this past week. The Bengals aren't good. They are not. This defense is not good. Trey Hendrickson's very good. Logan Wilson's good. That secondary's terrible. Von Bell, who was here last year and then got cut and went back to the Bengals, he's not very good. I think they should feel really, really confident in this offense. Yeah. Now, the defense is a whole different story. Jamar Chase is still Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is a problem. And healthy. Zach Moss doesn't do anything for me as a running back. That kind of seemed like a cheap move. And Joe Burrow, is Joe Burrow. I mean, look, as somebody who had highlights in the 90s and the 2000s, I just, during the boy bands phase, I think it's time for him to move on from these highlights. I really do. When you go 0-3, you can't have highlights. It's actually, I think, a bylaw. Just for men probably wrote it down.
I mean, if I go 0-3 in my men's league basketball team, I'm changing my hair.
Yeah, you just have to dye your hair like feather black, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Raven color black.
Okay, so you mentioned the
He's also got to get a dream catcher earring.
Mike is trying so hard to make Zach laugh this episode. It is so adorable.
It won! I won!
Technically, I made him laugh that time. But, okay, let's put some...
I was John Stockton on that one.
Let's put some numbers to the Cincinnati defense. Opposing rush play percentage, a.k.a. The opponent's play distribution. The opponent runs the ball 57% of the time against this Bengals defense. Mm-hmm. That is that is worse in the league. That means that more teams see that they can run on this Bengals defense better than anybody else in the league. They are allowing 1.3 rushing touchdowns per game, which is 24th in the league. They are allowing 142.3 rushing yards per game, which is 26th in the league.
That's where they rank as a rushing defense. Not that's the 20. That's like the 7th most in the league. I just want to clarify.
Yeah. Well, as in the defense is 26th.
Right. Correct.
So the point is the Panthers are probably looking at this Bengals defense and saying, "Oh crap, we can run on them." Right. And that is kind of what they looked at when they saw this Las Vegas Raiders team this past week. And I think they should have plenty of confidence going up against these guys. And the thing, and I don't want to spoil this too much, but a story is going to be published later this week for me where I talked to a whole bunch of Bengals fans who saw Andy Dalton in prime, Andy Dalton in vintage Dalton Bengals life. And I asked them...
At the time, he was just Andy Dalton, not Vin, but yes.
Yes, yeah, well, and I asked him, hey, I asked him a bevy of questions, among them, how does it feel to see Andy playing so well for the Panthers, blah, blah, blah. Are they going to be in Bank of America Stadium? And the overwhelming response that I got is, yeah, we were banking on the Panthers being a win. Now we're scared of them. Ooh. Isn't that interesting?
I mean, it's interesting in that it's comical, but yes. Here's the thing. Bengals can't, I brought up Zach Moss earlier. Yeah. Bengals can't run. They can't. So if you can make them one-dimensional, especially when you are not particularly a very good run defense, that helps you. That said, J.C. Horn versus Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Mike Jackson, at least they have the size to match up with them. A lot of the times you'll see T. Higgins and Jamar Chase bully corners who they're 4 or 5 inches taller than. I mean, Mike Jackson's 6'1". I believe JC's 6'2" or 6'3". Mm-hmm. Or he might just be 6'1". Either way, it's helpful.
He's 6'1", 201.
Okay. So, I mean, they're going to want to press them. The cloud coverage and the shell coverage that that the Panthers typically use, I think, will help. The safeties have really got to be assignment sound here. Jordan Fuller's dealing with a hamstring injury. We'll see if Nick Scott plays a little bit more, but Nick Scott played for the Bengals last year. Was horrible with the Bengals, but at least he knows what their offense looks like, and he's practiced against these wide receivers before. He knows their tendencies, etc. So I think they're in a pretty good spot. I don't expect this game to be high scoring. I know that I said that I retired picking the Panthers, but until they win 2 games in a row, but I think they're about to win 2 games in a row. I don't feel great about it, but I feel pretty good about it. And I think, look, I think it all goes back to sometimes you've got to make the right call. And I think benching Bryce Young, as I said, was justified last week. Not only was it justified, it was correct. And I think last week proved that. I think they're in a spot where if they want to contend, listen, in week 3, the only NFC South team to win a game was the Panthers. The Panthers scored 36 points, so did the rest of the NFC South. And I think that that's a step in the right direction. I don't think this team's going to contend for a playoff spot. I do not think they're better than the Saints. I do not think they're better than Tampa Bay. I still don't even know if they're better than Atlanta, who has been very competitive against 3 different playoff contenders. But I think there's a glimmer of hope. I think there's a pulse. I think the locker room's kind of stoked about what they can do when the quarterback play is productive. And look, I think, I'm not really a rosy glasses kind of guy, but I do want to be a straight shooter here. I do think that they can beat the Bengals and probably beat them in a convincing fashion.
Among the straightest shooters in the Panthers locker room, Tommy Tremble said, "This win shows that what we're doing makes sense. What we're doing is the right thing. I'm really happy for the whole team, happy for the coaching staff, happy for Tepper, the owner. I'm really happy for everyone in this organization to get that win, because if you ask anybody, I can tell you all of them felt that great feeling of a hard-earned win. You can tell this 2-15 season, however behind them they claim it is, they haven't forgotten it. And I think that's really important. Of course, the Bengals haven't forgotten their 0-3 start as well. Mike, that was real good. You want me to send it home?
I think it's time to wrap it up. I mean, you've quoted Tommaso Tremble, as I like to call him, and I think that's a good way to wrap.
Thanks, as always, for listening to Processing Blue with Mike Kaye and myself, and our lovely producer, Zach Dennis.
He is lovely. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
All good. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching our name, Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all of your Panthers needs. Stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
Like a Jadeveon Clowney sack, that's a wrap.